everyone, this is Alisha Costanzo and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm doing one of my challenges, which means I get to buy another book. Yes. Yes. Okay, so this one's super easy. I don't have to read anything for it. We are going to go through ranking my favorite authors. Now, I've seen a lot of people do this in a lot of different ways with like this extraness of a program or something on an app online. I'm not going to use that. I don't feel like I could properly rank my favorite authors if I had to like put them all in an order or something like that. So instead, I decided that I'm going to put them into categories of how they're my favorite authors. And then I might do a tiny bit of ranking at the end, like my all-times. So here are my thoughts. Bear with me, okay? My academic favorites, because I did do 10 years of college. And I taught for 8 years. So, ooh, that just made me think of a new one. I want to talk about the ones who influenced me both young and when I was a new adult, because they both shaped me as a reader and they shaped me as a writer. So they are super important to the types of things I write, aka Christopher Pike. We'll talk about it. I also want to talk about my current favorites, so the ones that I am just consuming all of the things currently. Possible newbies, because I've read like 1 or 2 of their books. I'm not quite sure yet, but it seems like they're going to be one of my favorites. And then my all-time favorites at the end. So that's what I'm thinking. That's how we're going to rank these things. Let's get into it. I have a lot of them. Let's start with my academic favorites, because tend to not be like my all-time favorites, but still were influential. I really enjoyed them. Yes. I actually just did an interview with horroraddicts.net about this because I publish anthologies and stuff. And some of my horror favorites really surprised me because some of them are literary. And the reason that some of these people are on here is because they prove to me that horror can be literary. Like, everybody can enjoy a good horror if it's done well. And some of my top favorites for academic is like Flannery O'Connor, A Good Man is Hard to Find. Holy shit, that story. Holy shit, that story. If you haven't read it, please go read it. It seems a little slow to start with. Bear with me on it. There's another story of hers that I do not remember the name of it and it drives me crazy, but I've also read it and I'm pretty sure it's her. But it's a young girl on the phone with a guy at the door and he's trying to coax her out of the door. And at first he seems like he's 17 and she's like 14, 13, something like that. And then he increasingly gets creepier and older and creepier. As another, I think that's Flannery O'Connor too. I could be wrong. Don't hold me to that. But it's another good literary story, and that is ranked up there in the holy shit factor. There's a lot in anthologies that I read that were really weird, but anyways, some of my top ones. Another one that is horror-esque is Margaret Atwood. I'm sure you've seen The Handmaid's Tale on Hulu, or at least heard about it. That's Margaret Atwood. I was introduced to her way before that, although I still haven't read A Handmaid's Tale, and I really, really should. I haven't watched it either. I watched the first episode. I'm like, I know what the story's about, and I'll get there eventually. But there was this one story of hers in an anthology that I read, or a collection, not an anthology, a collection I read of hers for a project in my master's degree program where I had to read the collection and like present about that author. And she had a story where this character was going through a divorce or a separation, and she was working through it, and it had a lot of alcoholism kind of things in it. But it talked about the fight with the husband, and she comes home one day and she finds a note that says her cat's missing. I put it in a trash bag in a garbage can somewhere. Good luck finding it, says her husband. And it ends with her going to look. So we don't know if the cat survives, and that it just rips out my heart. It's the perfect kind of ending to a story. And I say that, even though it's terrible, I say that because I still think about it all the time. That is a mark of a good story. It should leave you in suspense of not knowing what happens because it's only a slice of life kind of thing. Oh my God, that story. Margaret Atwood, seriously, you's fucked up. I like it. Another one that I read in my undergrad was Karen Russell. Now, she's not really horror based, so separate for them. She's more of a surrealist, although she did write a vampire story, Vampires in Lemon Grove, which was awesome. Not something I have exactly seen before. But she has this sense of scenery, of setting. She sets a scene in such a majestic, magical way that it hooks me, because that's something I'm not good at at all. I do not like scene. I like action and dialogue, and I try to sprinkle scene in there. But for her, it's like a character almost. It is magnificent. If you get to read anything by Karen Russell, I suggest highly. I suggest. Now this one has a double. This next one's like a double-y, and that is Tim O'Brien, The Things They Carried, because I read this is the only book I ever read in high school that they assigned to me, like completely full the way through. I was one of those who'd get like a quarter or halfway and be like, this is boring, I don't want to read it anymore. And I wouldn't. I'd go read something else because I like to read. It just wasn't that. And this guy made me want to write war fiction, and that is because my husband is a veteran and I want to write his stories. And I remember I got to meet him during my graduate program. So this is actually a signed copy. It's actually a signed copy. Oh my god. The whole time I was in line to meet him, I was fangirling like crazy because it had been like 10 years since I had originally read this, and he wanted to make me write this kind of thing. And so he actually, they collected in this, it was at OU, so they collected all of these note cards, everybody asked a question, and they chose mine as one of the 5 that he answered. I was so excited because I asked him about, advice he'd give to young people who want to write about war, which is obviously a very current topic. It's probably always going to be a very current topic because we're usually at war. It's somewhere in some part of the world, unfortunately. So this was about Vietnam, and he wrote a few stories about Vietnam that I really liked, and it was just getting to know people, starting with, not completely, but starting with what they carried on them, especially in a wartime, like the things that you need, the things that help you get through, the things that actually you need to survive, and those and that kind of thing. And it was just, it is brilliant. Another one that is kind of horror-esque, but people might not think that I like because I tend to not like poetry or literary things, and that is Robert Browning. He's mostly a poet. He did do plays as well, and this is a really old book that we actually got in Ireland. Ireland? What's Scotland? I think it was Ireland. It might have been Scotland. Over there on our honeymoon, my husband found this in a really, really old bookshop, and he got it for me, and it smells like old book too, and perfume. Oh my god, it just smells perfect. But my favorite of his is My Last Duchess. It is actually something that I taught. It is something that I've written papers and presented on. I rewrote it in a modern take of, because it's about a duke and his duchess, and she's dead, and they're looking at a picture on the wall, and it kind of showcases his control over her and his view of her as a harlot, and he's controlling both the person he's talking to and the reader while he's talking about controlling her, and it's this really interesting thing. I changed mine into Marilyn Monroe and Kennedy and paparazzi and the start of this like social movement of celebrities being everything. So that I have a special connection with it. Actually, that poem came to me in a dream. Like literally, I woke up and just had to write it because it was there, almost fully formed. And when I told my teacher that for assignment, he just looked at me blankly, like, "Really? That happened to you?" And I'm like, yeah, does that not happen to everybody? Because most of my dreams turn into some kind of stories. But he is a poet, so that might have been like a slap in the face for him. Sorry, it just came to me. I asked me to do it again, probably couldn't. And I don't know whether to call this academic or not, but my first introduction to him was in my undergrad program when I was taking a sci-fi and fantasy class, and that was Ray Bradbury. It's still in its wrapping. I don't plan on taking out of its wrapping for a long time until I actually read it, but The Martian Chronicles right there is one of the 3 on there, and I haven't read the other 2. But The Martian Chronicles is another one that is kind of oh my god, because it was horror and it was sci-fi mixed together about Mars and Earth and the way people treat each other and what colonialism looks like. And y'all, I don't know how many times I'm going to say that, but y'all, another fantastic writer. I had a lot of Poe influences in it, which I guess would be another one. I gotta stop putting books on this thing. Which I guess would be another one of my influences, academic-wise, but he's more of one of my husband's favorites. I like a lot of his stuff. Obviously, I've read a lot of his stuff for school, much like Shakespeare, and I've read all of the things, it feels like sometimes, although I don't feel like I've read anything at all sometimes. Yeah. Ooh, I should make an end list of my husband's favorites that I know of. That'd be interesting, right? Maybe next time. So this is actually something that I read in college. It's called Feed by M.T. Anderson. Granted, it's the only thing I've ever read by M.T. Anderson. He's got another book on my list that I want to read. But I taught this book to people, and it is essentially young adult, way in the future dystopia where they live in pods under the earth because the earth is dying. All the ocean life is dead. They have tree farms and meat farms, which is literally like bushes made of meat and gore and eyeballs and stuff, and it's so polluted that people start getting lesions and they start making it trendy, and it's all about consumption. Feed. And the little feed in the back of the brain, they put a microchip back there and it controls everything. It's your link to the internet and to the world, and it pop-ups in front of your eyes while you're walking. Which is good that they don't have to drive because they have automatic driving stuff. And it's just this weird like disconnect of people, and the language is really hard to get through at first. But if you give it a chance, magnificent. So that's really, I think, all of my academic ones. Okay, so let's get on to what's my next stage. Influences. My very young influences. And I really wish I had more of them than I do on me, but I don't. I do have a lot of one guy, and you're gonna know him really fast because you've seen this book a whole lot. This is Thirst by Christopher Pike. It was part of the last vampire series, which I have back there on my other shelf. I just don't want to dig them all out. I had all 6 of them originally, and now there are 5 of these guys, and number 2 ends with number 6 that he originally wrote. And I finished reading this one finally. It had been on my TBR for a long time. Number 2 has been on my TBR. It's on my desk for a long time, and I will get through it again because I want to keep going with it. It's just, look at this. Look at how massive this is. So, Christopher Pike, obviously, Thirst, was a major influence for me, the last vampire series, because I write about vampires. I write very similarly than he does. Like, my style mimics his so much because I idolized him. I still idolize him, let's be honest. But he would fuck up my brain all the time. Every single book. Fuck up my brain. The twist this guy did, probably more obvious to me now that I've read a lot more, but because I had only read really one author before him, R.L. Stine, that he just like hooked my heart and I consumed everything of his. So, a part of the way I might help with ranking these things is to talk about how many books that I've read by him. And I have read 60 of his books. Not just that one, but another one of my favorites is Sati. Oh my god. And this is a little one. Most of them are otherwise pretty little. But, oh my god. The girl in this, I wanted to be her. I wanted to be just like her. And I can't explain it. I really can't. It's just a feeling like I loved reading this as a 16-year-old. Another one is a series that's just got some really pretty covers, and this was the first time I'd ever seen representation of somebody with autism as a main character, and that is the Alisha series. She was autistic in the real world, and because she was a fairy princess, literally a fairy princess in another world, and they trapped her, and so when she was born into the human world, she was autistic, so she couldn't communicate well because she was only partially there. And I thought that was a really interesting metaphor for autism and how we communicate with them and that type of thing. So I really loved this series, and it went on. Of course, I love my little redheads too, so. And she got dragons. She got to speak with dragons. Very Aragon-esque. I don't know if this was before Aragon. It might have been. Because this guy was writing in the 80s and 90s. I don't know when Aragon came out. Not one of my favorites. And there was one more that is in my son's room, and I just didn't want to go in there and get it because he's not here and I just don't like doing that kind of thing. And it is The Season of Passage, which was sci-fi, horror, fantasy, mythology, all mixed into one thing. It had vampires. It had a trip to Mars. It had mythology of people moving from Mars to Earth and back, and this is a cycle that's gone through over and over again. It had the child at home who had special, she was special in some way, I don't remember how, but it just waiting for her sister, and it was just her and her sister went to Mars, and all these things happened. And I talked about this when I read 172 Hours on the Moon, because what happened in that happened in this, and of course Christopher Pike did it better. Of course he did. Okay, Christopher Pike definitely influenced me. I write a lot like him. I mean, I feel like I've advanced from how I write like him, but my vampire series and my vampires come a lot from him. And one of the things I really like about his vampires is most people do European vampires. He did Middle Eastern vampires, Indian vampires, and it has Krishna in it, And a lot of those mythologies, he actually does it in a lot more of his books than I had originally noticed. And I really love how he does different cultures instead of just white cultures. Which there's nothing wrong with doing white cultures, that's part of what I do because I'm white. But him being, a straight white man and doing a lot of female, first of all, main characters and having females on his covers and having non-white females on his covers. He was one of the first ones to do that back in the 90s. He's just, if you get a chance and you like young adult fiction, fantasy, horror, sci-fi, I strongly recommend him because... And if you have a child who is 16, I'd say 14 and up, maybe 13 and up, because it does get kind of violent and sexy sometimes. But if you know somebody who is into that kind of thing, please read his books. Like, you can pick one and not go wrong, honestly. Okay, I could talk about it all day, so I'm gonna stop and we're gonna move on to my next one, who is, of course, R.L. Stine. I don't have any of his books out right now because half of my books are packed away in my shed and I just don't have the room for them in here at the moment, and it seems silly to unpack things when we're looking for someplace else to live. I wrote down a few of his, and I love my numbers here. So I've actually read the most of R.L. Stine because I grew up on Goosebumps. And like my favorite Goosebumps was the Little Dummy one. Night of the Living Dummy, I think it is. Because dolls scare the shit out of me. Like, I've had this issue since I was 6 when I watched Child Play for the first time with my brother who was 9. And I'm a horror fanatic. I've watched horror movies all my life, obviously, from 6 and up. And I had nightmares about Chucky for a long time until I married him in a volcano in a dream and I was suddenly okay with it. Like this, I'm weird, it's fine. But I read 60 Goosebump books, and he's got way more than that now, but I grew out of it, obviously. I also read a lot of his Fear Street. I read 18, at least, of his Fear Street that I can remember. It's been a long time, and I got most of them from the library, and that is where I found Christopher Pike, was looking for all Stine books, and he was, like, right there. Oh my god. This dude... like, made me feel like I was these characters a lot of the time and just scared the shit out of me. I remember reading them, traveling with my mom to go clean houses, because that's what my mom does, or did, for a living when I was growing up, and I used to go do that with her during the summer. So I spent a lot of time reading R.L. Stine books on a bed while my mom cleaned, because I would make it too fast in certain places while she was visiting with elderly people. With R.L. Stine, there's a book that I need to reread, because I first read it when I think I was 17 or 18, and it was his first ever adult book. It is called Superstitious, and I remember parts of it pretty vividly, but what hooked me on this book and made me keep going even though I didn't understand some parts of it, because I just was not old enough to understand some parts of it, was by the end of page 7, the prologue, mind you, there was somebody who was literally torn to pieces. And I went, this is my kind of book. That is what I've always been like as a reader. I've always been very violent and sexy. Like, those two things are the epitome of my writing and the epitome of pretty much what I like to read. So, yeah. Okay. R.L. Stine, major influence with the creepy factor. Obviously, I grew up reading him. I used to get Goosebumps books in my Easter basket. That's what I asked for instead of toys or candy. I'd ask for Goosebumps books, like the ones I was missing that I really wanted to read. And my parents had set me up in the living room. So we had a family room, dining room, living room, kitchen in the middle. And then you go upstairs to the bedrooms, downstairs to the basement. So in the living room, in the front where we used to keep our Christmas tree and stuff, and the gigantic TV in a wooden box. If you don't know what I'm talking about, the one with the little, like, you had turn dial and there was only 9 channels on it, which was just a piece of furniture for a long time when I was growing up. In the corner of that room, I would have a bookshelf and a beanbag chair, and I would just sit and read all day. I'd read 2 or 3 books a day. That's what I did. I didn't have a lot of friends when I was growing up. I was bullied pretty heavily for being weird. Part of it was because my hair was curly and it always looks like it's gnarly. It's not. I brushed it, I promise. Or combed it. You comb curly hair. You don't brush it. Brushes make it fizzy. Just saying. Anyways, R.L. Stine was a big part of my childhood. It's definitely a young influence. Alright. My adult influences. Like, being a new adult influences. I have a few of them. Again, some of them are just packed away. I don't have access to them. But one of the main ones is Sherilyn Kenyon. I do have some of hers. This one, in fact, is my favorite, Zarek. I was just talking about this with A Heart of the Hunter. The broken man who seems so freaking mean has a heart of gold. And that's this guy. Love it. Now, I will show you a clip here while I'm talking of the amount of Sherilyn Kenyon books I have. I even have some back there behind me. My husband got me hooked on this because he started reading these when he was in Afghanistan. And when he came back and we got together, I started reading all of his Sherilyn Kenyon books. And these guys are pretty fantastic. I've actually met her too. I have met her. I had her sign a book a few books for us, and I got to talk to her for a minute because I used to role play her characters online. That's how I met my friend Kaya. That's how I've got some of my characters in my books for my current series. And she was just a major, major influence. She also influenced, of course, some of my writing and whatnot. But anyways, Sherilyn Kenyon is a very nice woman, and I like her very much. And we got to talk about the fact that I like to watch, and she goes, yeah, I can't wear them very often. I only wear them out to these things because I drain the battery when I wear them. And I'm like, that's funny. My husband does that too because he was indirectly hit by lightning. And she just looked at me. She goes, really? I'm like, yeah, but he's got social anxiety, so he didn't come today. Can you sign this for him? And she totally did. So we got to chat for a couple minutes, and I, of course, asked her about Dev Devere from No Mercy, which is back here, which is actually the book that made me stop reading her series. Because I played Dev. I was Dev. And they were not the same character. I did not like his love interest in it at all. I did not see the attachment to them. It seemed forced. And that's probably singularly, maybe not singularly, it might also be the book. Because my Dev was in love with Kaya, who is this part of the story that I am currently loving read. 3-part series. He is the prequel character and the bear that gets her in trouble initially in Loving Red, and will be in this triangle in the last one, Loving Them Both. So, big influence on my stories and my writing as a new adult. Alright, another one that I don't have in the moment is Anita Blake. So, Anita Blake, oh my god, that's a series. That's not her name. Her name is Laurel K. Hamilton. Alisha. Laurel K. Hamilton. I read her Anita Blake series, and that thing, for the most part, what I got through of it was fantastic. It got a little too sexy at one point, where sex was pretty much all of the plot, and I got kind of tired of it. But we're talking about vampires, we're talking about necromancy, we're talking about shapeshifters of a different kind than we normally see. We're talking about this whole new world that we get into, and she's even got some graphic novels that were pretty cool. I liked a lot of it. It got sexy. I was told after the sexy dies down again, it gets good again. I haven't gotten there. Maybe one day I will go back and reread the series and like do the things. Maybe if they're on audiobook, that would be awesome. But I also influenced me and my vampires and that kind of thing, and I just love the violence and violence and sex. Not too much sex, but I still like that in there. She also wrote I think it's Mary Gentry series, which is also a lot of violence and sex, but it's more fairy-based. And it's like this reverse harem kind of thing. Both of them are really, and the powers come from sex. But they're all trying to impregnate her to see who's going to be her mate, which is really fun. Kind of doing that in my current series, Wooing the Alpha, but not quite. Like, she can't get pregnant until she chooses someone, so it's a little bit different, but I can see some of the influences in there. Read a lot of her books, too. I don't have numbers for the two of them, because I wrote them down real quick and didn't count. More than 20, possibly more than 30 of those authors, so there you go. Another young adult influence is Stephanie Meyer. I don't think anybody has not been influenced by Twilight in some way who's in my age group or younger. Like, honestly. Now, I wrote about Twilight, and I presented it at a conference. I've had it published in an academic book and all those things about vampire literature and that stuff. And Twilight's not my favorite. I read her new book. I've read The Host. I plan on reading The Chemist. Like, I do like her writing in general. I see why it works and how it works, even though it's not my favorite. However, of all of her books that she's written so far, this novella is my favorite. The Short Second Life of Bree Tanner, because I read the Hemingway story that this is based off of. The title is based off the brief second life of, I don't remember his name, who goes into a reserve to kill a lion, and like he finds this new glory for life and like dies. Almost dies and then dies. And it's essentially what this happens to this young girl. And I liked the powers in this and how she explained vampires in this and how they don't glitter. They sparkle so brightly in the sun they look like they're on fire. Like, the way powers and new vampires were shown in this was brilliantly done. A little bit too late, but brilliantly done nonetheless. So, pretty influential. I've read almost all of her books that she's written, so definitely influenced me in some way, especially academically. Current favorites. I don't have a lot of their books currently because a lot of them I've been reading on my library app. But one of my current favorites is Marissa Meyer, the Cinder series. This was a total cover by the way, because this right here, whoever thought of this was brilliant. I walked by and went, is that a Cinderella cyborg story? Sure fuck enough. It's a Cinderella cyborg story. how could you not want to read that? And it was so well done. It was so well done. The whole series was well done. Like, I just finished the series and I'm pretty excited about the whole thing. Like, just to have experienced it. And I have Heartless on my TBR. It's my 21 before 2021 reads, and I can't wait to read it, which is, of course, a Alice in Wonderland retelling, which is another one of my husband's favorites. We have all of Lewis Carroll's and a special older book version of it that I got him for his birthday, because his birthday is Christmas Eve, so I like to do special things for his birthday. And that was the first one we did, was Alice in Wonderland themed. So, yeah. Marissa Meyer, definitely a current favorite of mine. Another current favorite of mine is Holly Black. Got this at the library before I read the first book, which is The Cruel Prince. And you call them my favorite author. The Cruel Prince was the first one in the series, and I bought this because it was blue and I liked the cover. It was, again, good marketing at the library. And then I went and I listened to it. It was my first audiobook that I ever listened to, was The Cruel Prince. This happens to be my favorite of the series. Like, loved it. Perfect in between of the two books. Another one of hers that I really, really like is The Darkest Part of the Forest, which is another one I listened to and I don't own, which was about fairies and like this sleeping beauty, but it was a boy, and it was part of this town's mythos, and then the boy wakes up and he's a fairy, and it's fantastic, and people go missing and die, and it's a whole lot of fun. Another one of hers is The Coldest Girl in Cold Town, which is a vampire series where all of the vampires are like collected in this cold town and they're not allowed to leave, and people go there but they can't leave again because they might be infected and get other people with vampirism, and anybody who's found to have vampirism is put in there. And it starts with a party where this young girl wakes up and everybody's dead because a vampire attacked, and she finds both her friend, her ex-boyfriend, and the vampire locked in a room together, and she has to help them escape before the authorities come to kill everybody, to cleanse the place. So they end up in Cold Town, and it's a very interesting story. Very interesting story. The last one I wanted to talk about was The Black Heart, which is part of her Curse Worker series, which is about witchcraft and how witches have all the power in their hands, so everybody wears gloves so that they can't influence you and all these things. And he's part of a family young man is a part of a family who's been in trouble for this kind of thing before, and he gets involved in the curse mob kind of thing, and the young girl that he loved growing up. And it's this whole, like, the last one I believe is Black Heart, and that one was my favorite. It was so well done, like perfectly wrapped up, end of a series kind of book. I love Holly Black. Current favorite, yes. And I've read 10 of her books, by the way. Another current favorite is Megan March. You might have heard me talk about her quite a few times. She is my current romance favorite. She's done things in romance that I've seen other people attempt to do and not do well. She is one that still surprises me somehow. I don't know how she does it, but she surprises me in each book. And that is a hell of a task, because I've, 1, read a lot, and 2, edited a lot, and I've studied this and I know story form, so usually I'm not very surprised. And she surprises me every time. I love it. And super, super sexy. So the first one of hers I've actually read, Dirty Billionaire. I got it for free off of BookBub, because BookBub whore. This is how I find new authors that I love sometimes. And just completely blown away. Had to read all 3 of them, like immediately. And then I kept going through her books. And I've read 17 of hers, by the way. Dirty Billionaire, I definitely want to reread because I loved it a whole lot. I also loved Ruthless King. It's about this like macho, he is the mafia, but he's not the mafia. Like, he's the in-between Lord of New Orleans. And he wants this girl, and he's gonna come take his debt, which I actually read. Did I read that one first? Because it was part of a 10-chapter challenge, and I got 2 chapters into it, but I ended up reading something else first. And then I came back to that one. And yes, sexy, dominant against dominant, hate to love kind of shit. Yes. And then the other one was Deal with the Devil. Same kind of thing. And I am just... This is one that I actually read another that was similar to it, tried to do the same thing. With a girl who was gambling, trying to win big at poker, only the one that I didn't like so much was cheating at poker. The other one was just winning at poker. And the billionaire came to save her, and like her sister was kidnapped in both of them. And this whole thing, Megan March did it so much better. Like, oh my god. Super sexy. Every single one of them's made me cry. And like, your heart just yearns and breaks for these guys. Absolutely. Okay, I've read 17 of her books so far. I have another one of hers on my 21 before 2021, and I'm trying not to consume them all too fast because then they're going to be done. and my heart will break a little bit, so I'm trying to like space them out a little bit. Another one I'm sure you've heard me talk about quite a bit is Michael Connelly. He writes the Bosch series. I again read this because of my dad, because we watched Bosch together and he gave me the first book, and so I read it and I was hooked. Michael Connelly is an excellent writer. Him and I really need to have a conversation about commas, but otherwise, very few issues with his book. So Black Ice is one of the ones that I really liked, which was, I think, number 2 in the series when he goes down to Mexico, and just the atmosphere of it down there I really liked. I don't think it's one that they had in the TV show, which is probably another reason I really liked it. I also liked The Last Coyote, which just the connection he had throughout that with the coyote and being a lone creature, because he was the cop that didn't care if you were a cop. If you did something fucked up, he'd get you for it. He didn't care if you were a billionaire, he'd get you for it. Everybody mattered or nobody mattered. I love Bosch. And Angel's Flight's probably the one I remember the most about, because it is one that they had on the TV show as well, but it was so different than the TV show. And that was this like fairy thing bringing you up this flight of stairs, and a lawyer was on it and somebody shot him up the ass. It was something else, and he was trying to get cops. Like he had a suit against cops torturing a young black man, and the ending. All of his endings surprise me too, and they're a bit violent. He gets me each time. I've read 12 of his books so far. Still in the middle of The Poet. I'm waiting for it to come back because somebody took my audiobook away. Another current favorite is Patricia Briggs. I have read 7 of her books, by the way, and she has the Mercy Thompson series that I have just been flowing through. So of those, my favorite is the first one, Moon Called. Second one, Bloodbound, even though it's fucked up. And I think it's number 6, River Marked. Like all of them are fantastic. It was really hard to pick those, but those are the ones who stuck with me the most. And of course, this is a coyote shifter who lives amongst werewolves and vampires and fae and witches, and is like the least deadly of them all, but apparently the hardest to kill. And she keeps taking down some big folks. Yes. And there's some reasons for that I don't want to give away, because you don't find that out until book 6. But I've read 7 of her books so far. 8 of her books now. I just finished a new one in her other series, which is attached to this one. It's like a side series of it, and is again a really good book. So yeah, I want to glance over some of my other favorites that have been like between the my new adult self and now. So Colleen Gleason, I have a couple of her books. She does Sherlock Holmes retellings with it's a Stoker and Holmes, so it's Bram Stoker's younger sister and Sherlock Holmes' niece, and they go on adventures and solve things together. And they are excellent. I want to try some of her new adult series with vampires and stuff. And there's of course vampires and witches and things like that in these too. Talked about Mercer Meyer, which I've read 6 of her books. Stephanie Meyer, I've read 7 of her books. Veronica Roth, the Divergent series, I've read all of those. I really enjoyed those. Even the last book, even though some people didn't like the last book, I liked the last book a lot. I also read some of her short stories here recently, and I want to read her Carve series. I don't know if that's what it's called, but I appreciate her. The movies, unfortunately, after Divergent for her, sucked. They didn't match the books enough, and like so much so that I just wanted to scream and throw a fit at somebody. I also really like Roshani Chokshi. I've read 3 of her books so far. I like her Aru series, and I know I've read 1 of her other young adult series. I like the mythology. I like new mythology. So yes. Gail Carriger, oh my god. Vampires, steampunk, wears, like all of the things. Super freaking funny characters too. Like she's got the quirkiest little characters I have ever seen, and you will not be disappointed if you read her books. Let me tell you. Okay, so those are all my current favorites. Let's talk about some possible newbies. I'm gonna just kind of throw them out there because I've been doing this for a while, and this is gonna be a long video. Forgive me for that. So some of my possible favorites that I've read a couple of would be Maggie Stiefvater. I loved The Raven Cycle. Excellent series. I haven't read anything else by hers yet, which is why I struggle to say whether or not she's a favorite author or not. But I flew through those real fast, and I love the narrator because he was in Remember the Titans, and that's one of my favorite movies. I also really loved Sonali Dev. I've read 2 of her books. I really loved her Pride and Prejudice retelling. I kind of liked the other one. I had some issues with that, but it was a solid 4 book. Like, if certain chapters weren't included, I would have totally given it a 5, but because they were boring and I didn't need them, it was a 4. But I definitely want to keep reading her things, and I definitely want to reread Pride, Prejudice, and Other Flavors. Like, yes. Shannon McGuire, I've read 4 of her books, all in one series again so far. So like, I'd like to read the Door series that she's got, or the Wayward Children or something like that. But I've read the Encrypted series so far, 4 of them. We want to talk about another person with some crazy, crazy fucking characters who like to talk weird, but pull it off. And they're just super weird. I love weird people because I'm weird. And total yes, we're talking, once again, fantastical creatures, they're cryptozoologists, a family of them. They're fighting the religious sect who's trying to wipe them all out. Dragons and boogeymen and all of the things. Martha Wells is another, I'm pretty sure, favorite. We've been reading the Murderbot series, so we've read 4 of them so far, and my husband and I love this series. It's a very sci-fi, action, military type thing where we have a rogue sec eunuch, aka the armed guard, who is part robot, part human, and he grows, like the growth that she manages in 4 hours each time, like people need to study her and how she does this. It's pretty fantastic. I want to read more of her stuff other than just the Murderbot series. I also have Hafsa Fazil, and I've read 2 of her books. It is, the recent one was We Free the Stars, which was the second one in the series. And like, We Hunt the Flames and We Free the Stars. Excellent duology. Loved it. Loved the culture that is not my own and learning about, and the female empowerment and that kind of thing. Really, really nice. Well written. We'll definitely read more of her stuff as soon as it's out. Kim Harrison, I've read 2 of. Now this is another one of those that should go along with the Sherilyn Kenyon and the Laurel K. Hamilton because they were published around the same time. Patricia Briggs too. That my husband read that I didn't start reading until recently. And I read it for the first part of a challenge, and I really like her Rachel Morgan series so far. I've only read 2 of them. I plan to keep going. This is, once again, vampires, werewolves, only we have people who like are trying to rein them in. We have a detective organization separate from the human organization to keep everybody in line and all of the things. And somebody else who does that really well, by the way, is this guy, Justin Gustinas, another one of my favorites. Now, he was a professor of mine, and he does like this occult detective series as well. This is these Quincy Morris series, so I've read probably 6 of his books so far. He also likes to do a lot of horror-y things with his vampires and all of the occult stuff, and does a really, really good job of it. Also a major influence of mine because obviously I took like 7 of his, I took all of his classes I could, 7 of them, and by the end of it he's like, Alisha, give somebody else a chance to answer those questions. I'm like, okay, and then nobody else would, and so he'd go, all right, Alisha, go ahead. And I was teacher's pet. So, yeah. Okay, now we're getting down to the really nitty gritty ones here. So like Kandari Blake, I think I said Kandari Blake. And I've read 2 of her books about the triplet queens. Like, I think the last one was One Dark Throne, 3 Dark Crowns. That series, very dark fantasy that actually kept me going, so it wasn't too bogged down with description and background stories and all those things. Like, she handled those things very well. I really like that series so far, but I haven't read anything else by her yet, so we'll see. I also have Jay Kristoff, same genre, dark fantasy, Nevernight. What was the one that I just read? Was it God's Grave? I think the next one's God's Grave. No, I read God's Grave, Dark Dawn, something like that. Anyways, I read the first 2. Lots of blood. Assassin, young girl assassin. She's got the dark in her. And the twist of the last book, like the first book twist, fucked me up. Second book twist, I sat there going, what the fuck just happened? For like an hour. I had talked to my husband about it. I'm like, I don't know, just like, she just fucking ripped my heart out, stomped on it, and put it back in my chest, and was like, breathe, live, you'll be fine. I'm like, no, I won't. So we'll be reading book 3 soon, and I hope that I like some of the other things that he writes, because I have another one on my list for 21 before 2021 to see if that's true or not. I also have Margaret Rogerson. I've read both of her books so far, which is An Enchantment of Ravens and Sorcery of Thorns. I actually said it right that time. Oh my god. And I really enjoyed both of them. Young adult, strong female. One had to do with a library, which was fantastic. A Scrivener in a library, like. But fairies and magic and all sorts of things that are fantastic. I like her writing style. I want to see what else she's got. Sarah Henning is another one. I've only read 1 of hers, 2 of hers so far. I've read 2 of hers. I know one of them, I'm pretty sure, is Sea Witch Rising, or Sea Witch, which was an Ursula retelling, and I really, really liked it. And the other one was The Princess Will Save You. Again, strong female, dad dies. Somebody kidnaps her best friend, who is a, lowly servant kind of guy, and she goes and saves him. And the twist at the end, Oh my god. I feel like there's gonna be a lot of fun stuff. Kitty, get off my desk. Another one is Emily Henry. I've only read one of her books so far, and it was Beach Read, and I could not do anything else while I was listening to that. I read it in 6 hours, and I immediately put it back on hold to read it again. Like, it's coming up soon. I'll be reading it again. I also got another one of hers on hold right now, so I'm gonna see if I really like her style, if that was just a one-off for me. Very contemporary romance with January and Augustus. January and August, which kind of completely like shows their opposites and stuff, but I want to reread it because I want to, knowing what I know now, seeing the things that I didn't see before, I think is going to make it even better. So I really loved it. I really loved the tension and stuff and the real, and how it wasn't just like fluffy romance stuff, but they had real problems that actually got solved through it. And I want to see, I wish I got to see more of that party. I guess it's just the glimpses is enough. But anyways. Another is Trisha Levenseller. I read Daughter of the Pirate King. I have The Shadow Between Us on hold right now, and it's once again a strong female young adult character who has to battle her way and save some people and try to decide whether she wants to be good or bad. And it's really, really cool, like mermaids and pirates and stuff like that. A lot of fun. So I'm hoping the next one's also going to be fun. Is this my last one? I think this might be my last one, if you guys are ready for that. V.E. Schwab. I read The Invisible Life of Eddie LaRue and fell in love. Like, that story, I can't really describe that story without giving spoilers, other than it's a girl who lives forever. She's immortal because she's cursed, and nobody remembers her until one day someone does. And it broke my heart, but it ended in the perfect place. Like, with heartbroken, perfect place. So I'm gonna have to read more of her stuff to see if she's a favorite. I'm pretty sure she's going to be a favorite. So I'm gonna do a quick review of my list to make sure I didn't forget anything, and then we'll talk about my all-time favorites. Okay, I did forget two. So two of my other new adult influences I can't believe I forgot about. Suzanne Collins' Hunger Games. I just read the Ballad of Snakes and Songbirds or something like that, which granted was not as fun as the original series, but definitely enjoyed it. Definitely want to read more stuff from her. Major influence in my young college years. Another one was something that I read in school again, which was the Ugly series by Scott Westerfeld, and I read a lot of his stuff, and it was very much like Feed, like along the same line of that stuff, where post-apocalyptic world, we have the uglies, which are teenagers, that get turned into pretties, which is like 16 and up, but they put like lesions in your brain to make you comply with all these things. And this girl meets a guy who is outside of the society, and they want to kind of take it down, and so all of this shit ensues. And it's very, even though they recycle a lot of things, and they're very consumeristic, they're very focused on beauty and physical appearance and that kind of thing instead of intelligence, because if you're intelligent, you can rise up against the government. Really, really cool series, too. Alright, let's talk about my all-time favorite. Hi, Nyx. Hi. Oh, I've got a kitty. I got you, kitty. I got you, kitty. Hi, you're purring. All-time favorites. People I think I'm gonna love forever. Christopher Pike. Absolutely, absolutely gonna love him forever. Tim O'Brien. Absolutely gonna fangirl over him for the rest of my life. Megan March. Definitely gonna, like, if I'm gonna reread your books, you know you're one of my favorites right there. Which kind of puts, like, Sonali Dev and Emily Henry almost in that category, because I really want to reread their books, but we'll see. I'm gonna hold off on them. But still, Christopher Pike, Megan March, Holly Black, I mean, I have to get all of her signed things. Like, these are people I need to get signed copies from. Tim O'Brien. And I think, guys, those are gonna be like my absolute top favorite four, my top four. Now, if I had to put them in order, Christopher Pike would be number one because he was the most influential to my life overall. Then I think I would put Megan March second, Holly Black, and then Tim O'Brien. Sorry, Tim O'Brien. I totally fangirl about you, but we're talking about literary fiction versus fantasy here. And let's be honest with ourselves. So now, after an hour of talking about my favorite books, I'm gonna go do something else. And I hope you found something new to read. Please let me know what your favorite authors are in the comments below. Please give me some new ideas for new favorites. I love having way too many favorite authors. Like, why would you not want a billion favorite authors? It just doesn't make sense to not want that. So, okay guys, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you, and I will see you next time. I get to go buy a new book. Bye.